Well, hello again, and good day. Today's footage is actually a combination of 3 days of footage because we ended up having an opportunity to pick up a bunch of new rabbits, and we needed to make sure we had some hutches for them so they had some living quarters. So, the process is fairly simple, but I don't think I've ever actually shown the entire thing before. The first thing I have to do is clean up the ends of the metal. This is 1 inch by ½ inch welded wire fencing, and then that's going to be the bottom. The sides on this one are going to be 1 inch by 1 inch. Normally, well, not normally, in the past we've used 1 inch by 2 inch, and we used that for the roof also. But we actually had a weasel that was able to fit through the 1 inch by 2 inch bars, and he was actually able to attack one of our rabbits. Luckily, she made enough noise that I was able to get out there before he did any damage, and I tried to stab him with a knife. Apparently weasels' hides are actually pretty thick, so it was enough to scare him, but not enough to wound him, which kind of sucks, because now we know he's out there somewhere. But all of our hutches going forward will be built out of the 1 inch by 1 inch instead of the 1 inch by 2 inch, because that's just not something we can tolerate. Anyway, so as I mentioned, I have to clean up the ends, and I've tried to do this a few different ways. The best way that I have found is actually to cut in between the rows as close to evenly as possible, and then I go and bend the excess around the wire. So you've got a horizontal and a vertical wire. So if I'm cutting down between two horizontal wires, I'll take the vertical wires and, like I'm doing here, take the end of it and bend it over the vertical wire, and then close that and seal it. So, and then I take that end and stick that towards the outside whenever I can as I'm building, because this way there's no sharp edges that become exposed. I've tried using a grinder, which is definitely the fastest way to cut these. I've tried just cutting along the end as closely to that horizontal wire as I could. And I've tried just a bunch of different ways, but this is the only way that has actually resulted in the least amount of sharp edges exposed that we end up having to deal with. So it takes a few minutes to complete every time, and there's a little bit of extra effort. It does create a little bit of extra bulk in the corners, but the J-clips are sufficient to use. Now in this case, we didn't go buy any of this currently. We actually had bought some material for other projects, and the only thing that was actually purchased here for an actual rabbit hutch was the floor and the roof. But that got purchased a long time ago, about 2 years ago actually, and the intent was to build an extra hutch and then use it as a grow-out hutch, but life happened and we never really got around to it. So it was available to build right now when I needed it, but the 1x1 is actually the walls from the chicken coop that we had here for the first 4 years. We actually just moved that all of those chickens this spring over into the, we've been calling it a goose coop, although we've never actually gotten geese for it. That will hopefully change, but we've got to get a fence built, so that's one of the projects we're going to be focusing on this week, is trying to get that fence finished up so we can have a spot to put the geese. The construction of the hutches is overall fairly simple. I mean, you just have 6 sides. This is a little bit complicated since I'm using scraps that were from another project, but it worked out easy enough. There's a few sections that are doubled up to make sure that I have enough space to take each of the panels and actually attach them securely to each other. And since I'm kind of fighting with these, I'm also using more J-hooks than I normally would. I mean, they're like $6 for a pound, which is like 1,000 of them or something. So I figure it's worth doing. Like, so in fact, as a way of referencing, that jar on the table is actually a quart-sized mason jar. That's what I use to hold them in as I'm working. And Emily came over and wanted to do some help with it, so she is actually working on cutting them to size for me. So they're currently, what the hutch needed was 4 foot by 4 foot panels to go around, and there was 8 of those. And what I need is basically one that is 2 feet by 9 feet for the back, and then another one for the front, and then one that's 2 feet by 3 feet for both ends, as well as the dividers. So I didn't quite have enough to do the whole thing, so we ended up using some 1x2 to help finish off the middle section. Figuring and hoping that the weasel would not get to the middle section, because if it's climbing up something, it would theoretically climb and get to the end hutches and not the middle. So here's the day 2, and it's literally just picking up where I left off. So I'm working on combining these first 2 sections. And attaching them to the divider. One of the challenges that the welded wire presents is that they're not perfect, especially if you're going from one size to another. But even if you're just using sections from the same roll and trying to attach, like, they just don't line up. So after 2 or 3 or 4 feet, one of them might have had actually 48 different sections in that 4 foot section. The other one might have 47 or 49. So it's not a big deal, but it does kind of get annoying when you are trying to make a squarish cube type thing. So this is that section of the 1x2. Oh, I think actually what I ended up doing was using the 1x2 as a divider between the hutches, or between the sections of the hutch. Normally we like to build our hutches as 3 feet by 8 feet and 2 feet tall, which for a lot of people is considered too big, but I would much rather have more space in the hutch for the rabbits to roam in than not enough. I believe the guidelines set forth by the Rabbit Breeders Association is that each rabbit needs 6 square feet. So even these hutches, it exceeds that. These will be 9 square feet each. But we like to have that extra space for them, and especially since we have generally have bigger rabbits than normal. All of our rabbits are a blend of New Zealand and Rex, and they are, as adults, they get to be about 12 to 15 pounds is a pretty good average for them, and they tend to have usually between 6 and 10 kits per litter. We don't actually like having more than 8 per litter, but we're not going to say no to that, especially when the doe is able to properly feed them and make sure that none of them are lacking in nutrients. We've actually been somewhat lax over the last few years in breeding, because we just haven't had anywhere to sell yet. We have several places that are willing to purchase the processed rabbits from us. We just don't have a approved processing station yet. But we've actually started getting some people who are wanting to buy them for feasts and things, especially with we've got a couple of different people with the Society for Creative Anachronisms that have enjoyed buying some rabbit from us a few times, and so we're starting to get back into having them breed. We'll end up needing some new hutches and things, but what we really need is a barn of some form to help keep them safer and cooler. So here I'm going through and combining the 2 different pieces, and I'm most definitely going overkill, but as you know, I would much rather do overkill than have it come apart. So I went up both sections so that the end of each piece is connected completely, and then in the section that overlaps, I went and just kind of threw a bunch of them in, and was just put a little bit of a zigzag pattern just because I could. No actual rhyme or reason to that other than as I was going, it just looked cooler. So the wire is actually pretty beneficial for this. Once you get them attached, they actually do a pretty good job of supporting themselves. The only time I've ever had any get damaged by anything was when during a windstorm, one of the ash trees decided it didn't want to hold a couple of its branches any longer, and they came crashing down. One of the branches landed on one of our breeders' hutch, and she was fine. She was on the other side of the hutch, and it didn't do enough damage that she got out. The other branch did land in the middle of one of our hutches, and it unfortunately was our grow-out hutch. So that was a bit of a rough morning. We did lose one rabbit. A couple of others escaped, but we were able to eventually catch them. But we did have one that happened to unfortunately be under that branch, and that hutch was pretty much a complete loss. I was never able to straighten it enough to make repairs. which is one of the reasons why having a barn would be a good place. They do have a roof over each one. We actually use steel roofing panels to give them all a roof, which again adds a little bit more strength to the hutch itself. We just use basically a 2x4 along the inside and then screw the roof panel to that. And again, just definitely going overkill, attaching every single section. So this is day 3. The battery ran out, but I did get all of the bottom and all of the sides all attached. So now it's just a matter of putting the roof in place. And again, this is a 1x2 size for the grid, and it's a 3-foot wide section. And then we'll attach some doors and hardware for feeding and watering, and this will be ready to go. So normally I don't like to have the hutches connect because the rabbits can interact with each other, and if they're males, they can actually fight through the grid. They can, urinate on each other, try and mark each other, things like that. So this is basically going to be a we'll use it for like a quarantine kind of a thing if we have a sick rabbit or if we have new rabbits. Then we'll use it as a temporary living quarters just until we can get something built. At the moment we have we have two bucks that are usable. We actually had one that got out. I wasn't paying enough attention to the floor and didn't realize that it had actually corroded enough that there was a hole in it. And one day we came out and he was just gone. I don't know if he fell through or if he actually was curious and pushed his way through, but he's running loose in our forest right now. We haven't had the chance to catch him. We've got a trap out there that we've had, and we see him every now and again, so I know he's still out there and alive. We just have to catch him. So hopefully we do catch him, because I liked the fact that we had three different bucks, so that we had 3 different bloodlines. One of them was a red-eyed white, or an albino. One of them was a goody or chestnut. It's the natural brown color of the rabbits. And then the third one was a chinchilla pattern. So it's the agouti pattern, but all of the brown gene has been knocked down a notch, so it ends up producing a completely gray pattern instead of a brown pattern. And we actually had a buck and a doe for each of those 3 colors, and then we also have a broken agouti but doe. So her offspring will produce continue to produce a chance for a broken pattern. This and the idea is eventually I want to be able to actually tan the hides and use those, so that we're taking advantage of as much of the animal as we can. I've got a bunch of salted hides just waiting for me to get the time to figure that process out and actually do it. So it'll happen someday. I actually have an elk and a deer hide that are both salted also. That someday I'll be able to make something out of. So at this point we're we've got the hutch itself all built. So I have to cut an opening for the doorways, and then cut the doorway, which has to be bigger than the opening. And so I go through and we've got to clean everything out, and then we've got to make a hole for the feeders, and then attach the watering bowl clips, which is what's there in the lower left corner. And then as far as hinges go, I just use the J clips down the side of the door panel and attach them somewhat loosely, but I attach every single one, every single section, so they're very securely attached. And I just have to go through and make sure everything is cleaned up and attached and secured. And this footage is actually sped up twice. So the original footage was sped up to 10x, which is the max that my editing program will do. And then I exported that and ran that again and sped that up another 2x. And so like I said, this is 3 days of footage. It's about almost 7 hours of actual footage, compressed down into about 24 minutes a time. So but we figured we'd post this and have it available in case anybody is interested. We have built hutches for other people a couple of times. It's something that we don't necessarily advertise, but if asked about it, we'll do it. So this way, anybody interested can actually see the process, and I'm more than willing to actually help other people learn how to do this as well. The clips that we use are actually from the fence posts for the T-posts. It's a little wire clip that goes around. I found that's just the right size to rebend into a nice clip that'll hold the door shut. And then we also use a spring clip. So there's two different styles in case one of the animals is actually smart enough to maneuver and manipulate one of them. Hopefully they won't be able to do both. And there we've got that last door going on, and then that's where the camera actually died, so that'll be the end of the footage for today. So as always, thank you for watching. God bless you and yours, and stay safe out there.